Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video I'll be reviewing the guidebook Elminster's Candlekeep Companion, designed by Anthony Joyce, Justice Arman, Ed Greenwood, MT Black, Jeremy Forbing, Trevor Armstrong, and Laura Hirsbrunner for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shoutouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Manuel, Basil, Huskgirl124, Wizard Princess, my favorite D&D player Christopher, and Dave. And gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy Numa, Marcos Dave, Vicente, Gilberto, Sean AK, Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, Sam, Arash, Limpy Spuds, Jerome, Fatboy619, Scalinia, Nick. Thank you all very much for your support. My knowledge of Candlekeep is pretty much limited to the original Baldur's Gate game, which I played back in '99, I think, and I did not finish. Thankfully, the game starts in Candlekeep. I remember that. That's your little newbie intro area. And yes, that is bit of history is mentioned in this guide, but Candlekeep is one of the more iconic locations in the Forgotten Realms. It's right on the Sword Coast. It's this kind of great Library of Alexandria done in a fantasy style, which is a really neat location, neat idea for a location. And it probably is included in a lot of Sword Coast adventures. And this is, I guess it's a source book for if you're going to use Candlekeep as a location, similar to how, Dragon Heist did for Waterdeep and what Descent into Avernus kind of does for Baldur's Gate, and then Rime of the Frostbane for Icewind Dale, is that in addition to being an adventure, at least in those cases, those are adventures, but they also provide a lot of extra context and ideas and detailed lore and notes and NPCs, locations on that particular area. And that's what this does, minus the big adventure, basically, although it does have a chapter on adventure ideas. So instead, this is really helpful if you are going to be using Candlekeep in your adventures. It's separated by chapters. It's organized with an extremely gorgeous professional layout. And I want to iterate, as I do a lot of times, you designers, you do not have to use the same layout that is the kind of the standard 5e adaptation of having the two columns and the subheadings and the font and all of that. It's good. It looks good. It's always going to get a thumbs up for me, and it's very well done. But every time I praise it, I want to make sure I include that kind of modifier that, you don't necessarily have to do it this way to make your product stand out and look good. This one does look very, very nice, though, and has very, very good art, punctuated in main part by this gorgeous Candlekeep map. And I don't have that set up. I meant to have it better. There's a separate image file you get that's not this, turned around one that's embedded in a page. It's a full-on art piece of art. It looks absolutely fantastic. It's got little annotations that you can see with a little legend telling you where all the different things are. And it's fantastic looking. I absolutely love this art. I mean, this is like something you would get out of a professional fantasy guidebook, which is really what this is, which is incredibly impressive. So I'm going to go through what all the chapters are. Chapter 1 is new character options. So 90% of this book, maybe less than 90% because the character options are a pretty big part of it, but most of this book is for DMs. It's for DMs to help prep Candlekeep. It provides new spells, magic items, adventure ideas, all the things that DMs are going to want. But Chapter 1 is entirely player-focused because it adds new player subclasses. In this case, 4 of them that are all thematically tied and appropriate to knowledge, which is a really smart, appropriate theme to use because we're talking about Candlekeep, which is this big library, this fortress of knowledge. And I think it does some really, really fun things. These are some particularly excellent subclasses, like the Bard College of Destiny uses all of the abilities use Bardic Inspiration, which I think is always a good thing. Take what makes that class unique and expand on that. In this case, it basically changes the Bardic Inspiration die into the portent die that the Divination Wizard gets. So at 3rd level, if you are the College of Destiny, whenever you give a creature a Bardic Inspiration die, that person gets to immediately roll it and see the result before they've even actually used it. So it's like the divination die where you can kind of determine, like, okay, I've got this roll of a 2 or a 6 or something. I can determine where I want to apply that. In fact, it gets even better than that, because when you see that, whenever it comes up that you can use your Bardic Inspiration die, which depends on, I guess, the other Bard abilities you've got, you can choose to either take that roll, or you can choose to just re-roll it. So you can kind of, do you want to take door number 2 and just get the chance? So that's a really cool idea. And then future ones let you do different things, like add it to your, use the Bardic Inspiration die to add to your AC or add more damage or something. But that is a really, I don't want to say simple, because I don't want to discredit. I think it's a really impressive one, but it's elegant. It elegantly applies Bardic Inspiration in a different way while still pulling from something else, in this case the Divination Wizard, and make it unique. So I think that's a really, really smart idea. The Cleric Prophecy domain, similar idea, but in this case you gain a... first, the Oracle's Burden, that's what I was reading through, is like a trait with video games, where at the beginning of character creation you can choose to burden yourself with a negative factor in order to gain an advantage somewhere else, and that is exactly what happens here. So you can kind of give yourself a partial blindness in order to gain blind sight. You can gain a withered hand, and you have disadvantage on attacks, or you can't carry a shield, but then if you get to reroll ones on damage, so you get to have a little give or take, which is not necessarily tied to that certain cleric, but that's kind of a neat idea for a character class in general. I think that works pretty well. My notes on the cleric. You can make a religion or insight check and replace any roll with that. That is the cryptic advice, I believe. No, sorry, that's the prophetic vision. That's your channel divinity. So similar to instead of using a bardic inspiration, you make a skill check, and then you can choose to replace a roll with that roll. It's the same kind of concept. Basically, it's the concept of forethought already exists as the divination wizard, and how do we apply that concept to different classes, which I think is done very, very well here. The monk is a little bit more boring in that you can gain new skill proficiencies from reading. You can gain a few spells by spending key points. The crazy thing doesn't come online until 6th level, where you can teleport as part of your movement if you take the dash action, which monks can do as a bonus action by doing, I believe it's Step on the Wind. So you could take that, but then you're using your bonus action, but still being able to teleport. It still uses your movement, which is an interesting restriction, but that is a cool thing where you can kind of just appear as being, Nightcrawler or something, which is really cool. And then the wizard is obviously you want to have a wizard subclass. The big cool one here is that you gain Dwemercraft options, which are kind of similar to Warlock Invocations, but they're all focused on expanding or modifying your spells. So, for example, you could change a saving throw from something to wisdom, or from something to dexterity, just by changing the nature of the spell, which is a big deal. If you see a creature that might be particularly, they've got a good resistance, but you've got a really good spell you want to use, you can use that Dwemercraft option. And these are all like the wizard, like the Warlock Invocations. You can take these at certain levels, and you gain more of them as you level up, which I always like to see that concept of letting me pick and choose what things that I want to make as part of my character build. So I think that's really fun. I think they're all just really cool, fun ideas, and they do a good job of bringing interesting concepts while still maintaining that theme of knowledge and forethought. So, Chapter 2 is a breakdown of Candlekeep. So this includes the Avowed Monks, which are kind of the guardians and custodians of the keep. It breaks down all the different locations. You've got the Court of Air, the Emerald Door, the fact that it's built on top of these the volcano with catacombs beneath it, a giant tower called Exaltation that serves as the primary security apparatus for Candlekeep. And most importantly, how to actually use Candlekeep in an adventure in terms of what if a character wants to spend their downtime there? They want to travel to Candlekeep and research, information. That's something that, and downtime is something that's very much passed over in a lot of the dungeons. I mean, it's included a little bit in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I think Xanathar's does a better job of kind of expanding on that, and this builds upon that even further. And in this case, literally adds new abilities you can gain. For example, and there are rules about how much time you can take and skill checks and all that. But you could gain a new favored enemy, or anybody could gain a favored enemy. You just want to study this one kind of enemy, and you gain favored enemy bonus. Or you could gain the use of spells per once per long rest, because you're really studying this one or two particular spells. Obviously, you can gain new skill proficiency. So I really appreciate that. in addition to all the world-building flavor stuff, which is always nice. And a lot of this, I kind of glossed over the prologue, but that's actually included in the brief history. There's information about how Candlekeep came to be and the different prominent time periods and eras. All that stuff is really good, but one thing I want to always look for is like, well, what does that mean for my players, especially if they're not necessarily rolling their eyes at lore, but if they're just kind of starting to lose interest in this world building and stuff, what is actually going to help them build their characters or go further along in the quest chain that I've got them on. So this is the stuff that's particularly useful for me to look at, are these rules about, and I think downtime is a lot of fun for that, because you can have adventures here also, but you could just introduce Candlekeep as like, hey, we're in between adventures, we want to go spend one person of the party wants to go spend their time at Candlekeep. I do want to go back because I did kind of forget it's easy to forget because there's chapters. So here we go. This does a really good job. I guess it's the Welcome to Candlekeep prologue area. We're not even in the first chapter yet. Does a really fun job of breaking down the basics of what Candlekeep is and the history behind it. And this is similar to the Eberron travel guide that I reviewed, I believe it was earlier this year. This has been a very long year in 2020. Where it gives you a lot of information and it presents it in a very easy to read format. So somebody like me who is going to get lost in paragraphs and paragraphs of lore and history and information I really don't need to know from the beginning of time to modern days, all the things that happen to Candlekeep. Instead, it does a really good job of, hey, here are 5 main things to know about Candlekeep. As a DM, if you just want the Cliff Notes version, and I don't want to even say that as disparaging, because Cliff Notes are very useful, as anybody who's gone to school can attest, but it really does make a proper use, because as DMs, you're not, unless you're going to star your entire adventure in this one location, just give me the basic information I need, and then something that I'm excited about, I could delve into further. In this case, the important things are like how the monks operate, the Avowed, the fact that it's kind of a Switzerland of Forgotten Realms, where it doesn't really, they really don't care about good and evil so much, to an extent. They just believe in knowledge, and knowledge is the most important thing. The fact that you have to give a gift, you have to share knowledge, something that Candlekeep doesn't already have in order to gain admittance into Candlekeep, which is probably one of the coolest, most interesting parts of the location. I think it's very unique and very flavorful and thematic. And then the brief history does a really good job of just saying, hey, here's some time periods with particularly interesting moments that happened to Candlekeep, including one of them, which I read, and I was like, oh, that is the actual plot line behind that first Baldur's Gate game, which is my only through line to Candlekeep, which is the Iron Crisis and Gorian's Ward and all that. So I think this does a really excellent job and is kind of indicative of how the entire guidebook is written and organized, and how the information is presented, which is a huge thumbs up, and that should not be glossed over, which like I did earlier. It's very well written. So chapter 2 does all the locations, the downtime, all of that is very helpful. Chapter 3 is all about the library itself. So Candlekeep is kind of a fortress of what the library is inside of. And then chapter 3 goes into the specific library, including, I believe this is the chapter where we actually get, technically it's a D100 table of books, but actually there's about 20-some books here. But literally you can find all of these books here. There are examples. Some of them are actually, which is really fun, books that you can find in the DM's Guild. That's a really fun nod. Designers promoting other designers' work, including the Malady Codex, which I believe I've reviewed before in my DM's Guild review. So that's I just thought that was a really fun nod. Volo's Guide to Monsters is, of course, in here. Really fun idea. Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. To give like example books like, well, what can we find here, as well as like security systems, all these different things you can find in the library. So very comprehensive, huge thumbs up there. Chapter 4, Candlekeep Adventures. This would be the only chapter that I had some misgivings with, because it gives some ideas for adventure hooks, which are just a couple sentences, and then interestingly enough, adventure climaxes. So obviously adventure hooks, I think are they called hooks here? Adventure introductions. Which are basically adventure hooks. It's like, here's an idea for an adventure that basically started here, or I think they all actually start here. So for example, The characters are approached by a hooded figure in Candlekeep who claims to have acquired a forbidden text that can help on a journey. They offer to meet the characters at midnight to broker a deal for the text. One of them is called the Page Master, and walking through Candlekeep, a floating book opens up before the characters and teleports them to a story within its pages. A lot of this is people seeking knowledge, or you having to seek knowledge for you doing something, and so on. Adventure Climax is a lot harder to do, because that means it's trying to assume what the character's overall adventure campaign has been, and then in order to end at Candlekeep, which is also a weird way to have a climax be at the location where you're probably getting information. I feel like Candlekeep is always going to be the eponymous, or the titular, what am I trying to say? I'm using too many fancy words. The ubiquitous location where it's that act 2, where the characters are trying to learn about the threat and gathering information, and then maybe having some kind of action scene play out after you've gathered, or right when you discover some new piece of information. Not necessarily the climax, but it's kind of interesting that they're given here. There's 12 of them examples, and I've never seen that before, that a guidebook or a supplement or anything would even provide adventure climaxes. Obviously, I've seen the adventure hooks used quite a few times, but I would have preferred if there were fewer of these, and instead a couple of them had been expanded on to make them more interesting and more complete. That's how I would have liked to see it. But the reason I'm not complaining too hard about it is because we do get a kind of like a remaster adventure in the form of a section of Descent into Avernus. So in Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, Candlekeep is included as a location that the players should travel to as part of Chapter 1. I had to go back and look through Descent into Avernus to remind myself what all was involved there, which is also a good indication that there wasn't much involved there because I didn't remember it. Essentially, once they've cleared out the dungeon, Dead of the Three, whatever that dungeon's called in Baldur's Gate, as part of them learning about Elturel and Hell and that whole plot line, they have to go to Candlekeep, show them the magic items they got. I believe it's the shield and the puzzle box. And then they learn about, okay, here's the situation. You got to go rescue Elturel from Hell. I guess this is spoilers for Descent into Avernus, by the way. Sorry. Spoiler alert. And then, but I mean, hopefully it's mostly DMs watching this. And then they open a portal, or you have to travel to a nearby location, open a portal, and go to Hell. It's not a very interesting, at least as written, part of the story. It can be fun to go to Candlekeep. For a lot of folks, are like, oh, Candlekeep, that's pretty cool. But there's not really much going on there other than just talking to folks and then learning information. What this provides, which is an adventure designed by MT Black, who, if you've really done any kind of looking at the DM's Guild, you're probably familiar with that name, as an excellent adventure designer. They have really created a redesigned version of that. It's not even, it's like the final section of Chapter 1, so I'm having difficulty trying to categorize it as a chapter, or it's just an area. It's a redesign, and it basically creates a more interesting Candlekeep, where you, instead of meeting with like one person, you meet with an entire council of sages that are, the head honchos of Candlekeep, which is really fun, including Traxagorican, which is the polymorphed otter wizard, which is the one that you would have to go to the tower to be able to deal with, who actually sends you to Hell. In this case, he's just part of the council, so don't worry, we don't lose our adorable otter wizard. And you gain a kind of a mini quest chain where the puzzle box ends up summoning a bunch of demons. So it's a cool, again, you get that cool action sequence where you're learning information, and then, oh shit, we're on the thriller plot line, and we got to run from these demons. And the wizards are all dealing with the demons. I think you end up fighting like one of the demons. Again, I think you're only like 3rd or 4th level at this point. And you have to get the information. Funny enough, there's a whole meta thing here. We have to find this book in Candlekeep, which is funny because, again, Candlekeep includes like all these different books from across the multiverse. And that teleports you to a dragon. You talk to the dragon, and then the dragon tells you, okay, here's where the portal to Hell is. And then you have to destroy this grove of trees, but the grove of trees is guarded by a unicorn, so that's a bit of a moral dilemma. So it basically just creates a more interesting sequence of events that's more exciting and more interesting, has more NPCs in it than what is actually written in Descent into Avernus. So huge thumbs up. In my opinion, this is automatically way better than what is written in Descent into Avernus. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're not running Descent into Avernus, it would be hard pressed to try and use this, because it straight up does do the things where it's like, you need, I guess if you have some other reason to bring items to Candlekeep have those items explode into demons and then have to go find the portal to hell, you could still use this adventure, but it is kind of limited to where that's its main purpose. But I think that's a huge positive for folks running Descent into Avernus, and is frankly probably a pretty smart idea for the designers to include this, because out of all the adventures that Wizards has done, and goodness knows that we have spent a ton of adventures in the Sword Coast, let alone Forgotten Realms, Candlekeep is particularly featured in Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus. So to focus on that, I think, is actually probably a good idea versus a limiting one. I think if people are going to be wanting expanded information on Candlekeep, then they are probably running Descent into Avernus. Even if you're not, I think there's enough here that you don't even... I mean, this is only one chapter of a 6-chapter guidebook. But if this wasn't here, then I would feel like we would be lacking in the adventure chapter department by a lot, because I don't think all those little few sentence hooks is enough to excite me in terms of the adventure potential there, versus ones that were a little bit more fewer but had more interesting things going on. But the fact that we do get this rewritten adventure, I think, in my opinion, makes up for it. It's all my opinion. It's a review. Chapter 5. Magic item spells. We get over 20 new magic items and 30 new spells. These are all very fun and good from what I can tell. Magic item highlights the Candle of Tomorrow. And what I do like, there's also particularly good focus on uncommon magic items, so more lower level stuff, which is probably good, because if you're going to Candlekeep to research a threat, you're probably of a certain level, because after a certain point, you kind of have just access to information and factions and all these other things on your own. Whereas if you're more in the tier 1, tier 2 era of adventuring, you probably do need to go and get outside assistance to look up something or gain magical insight or whatever else. So I like that there seems to be a focus on the lower level stuff. But the Candle of Tomorrow is a one-use magic item that can vanish your entire party from anywhere from 1 minute to 24 hours. That is so incredibly useful. I can already see a ton of possibilities for that if you're doing any kind of infiltration or heist mission, or if you're trying to escape some foes or something. And then you just disappear, and then you reappear as if you weren't gone at all. So you don't age, which, not like you're aging within 24 hours anyway. But anyway, cool idea. Same thing with the Egg of Death, which you break open the egg, and out that pops out is a corpse of yourself, which is, again, really cool idea if you're being hunted or chased by somebody. You throw that egg behind you, and suddenly you've just left yourself as a dead body. It is apparently real, flawlessly passes detailed examination, registers no traces of magic to suggest its source. That's a really cool idea for a magic item. That's, both of these are kind of outside the box, non-combat related items, but still really, really cool ideas that I like. The Rod of Flame Extinguishing is like the opposite of a wand of fireballs. You cast Absorb Elements, you can extinguish flames, you can do Fire Shield, and Wall of Fire later on as a it's almost like a, how would I call it, God, what's the I can't think of the name of the red thing that you pick up and you squirt. Oh my gosh. Detergent? No, detergent is something you put in laundry. I'm lost. We're going to skip that over. Somebody in the comments will tell me what the hell I'm trying to think of. But I do like that idea. There's a lot of fun stuff with time and with knowledge that is all thematically tied to the concept behind what Candlekeep represents. Spells. It looks like a lot of spells here, but they're just organized by different classes. The spells, again, a lot of times are tied to more academic type spells. I love the alliteration that we get here. I did recognize, let's see, MON is from Baldur's Gate, so I recognized a few of the names here, which is always Gorion. It was the, or Gorion was the name of the, your Obi-Wan Kenobi, I guess, from your intro buddy. Well, I won't go into spoilers about that, but it's from the Baldur's Gate game. Just fun, like, references, I think, and appropriate for what Candlekeep is, and I think what a lot of people would recognize from Candlekeep is from that Baldur's Gate game. So fun spells in here. Chapter 6 is just NPC stat blocks for the ones that were mentioned, like the Guardians, that Silver Dragon I mentioned in the actual story, and we also get generic NPC stat blocks for all the new subclasses that were provided. Those 4, so the Cleric of Prophecy, the Bard of Destiny, all those characters. Really, really awesome artwork throughout. I mean, I mentioned the formatting, the layout, the design is all just gorgeous incredible. Huge thumbs up for all of that. Just, it's a really, really sexy looking product. I don't necessarily see myself as somebody who needed a guidebook on Candlekeep. I wasn't going to use Candlekeep, but I could easily see myself using Candlekeep if the need arose. And I would use this guidebook as all the information that I would need, frankly, in terms of how it works, the unique qualities of Candlekeep, and the information that I would need in order to properly run a sequence of events in Candlekeep, even if I'm not going to necessarily use any of the actual adventure hooks or ideas that are provided here. All right, pros and cons. Pros, professional layout and design. As I mentioned, absolutely gorgeous looking product. Pro, full color, gorgeous, I'm using gorgeous too much, map of Candlekeep. As you can see here, it's fantastic looking. I love this map to death. Pro, easy to read yet detailed guide to everything Candlekeep, including history, NPCs, locations, and books that you can find within. The important thing here is that it's easy to read. It's well organized. It's well formatted. It doesn't. It's not too wordy. It's just easy to read. Like, that is so important in order to convey all that information and just give me the Cliff Notes version while still making me feel like I got everything that I need to know. Pro, adventure ideas and hooks, including a superior replacement for the Candlekeep section, Chapter 1 of Baldur's Gate, Descent into Avernus. That is a huge add, because if not for that, I mean, yes, it's nice having the adventure hooks, but I do think they were a little bit lacking. But I think that they call it the Descent into Avernus Director's Cut. It might be a little bit overstepping its bounds because it's just that section of Candlekeep, but still, it's very, very well done. Huge thumbs up for that, and I would absolutely recommend replacing that segment of Descent into Avernus with this one. And pro, interesting new subclasses thematically tied to knowledge and forethought. Honestly, that might be my favorite chapter of the book. As someone who, again, doesn't necessarily see myself running adventures around Candlekeep, I do really like these character options. I think they're very fun. They take the concept of the characters into new areas while still maintaining that theme of you got your information from knowledge. Cons, I basically have none. As I mentioned, my only real quibble might be the fact that the adventures are a little lacking, but then I think it does make up for the fact with that Descent into Avernus director's cut or expansion, whatever you want to call it. I think that does a good job making up for it. Otherwise, it's a little bit of everything, which is really impressive. I mean, it's 80-some pages of, magic items, spells, and NPC stat blocks, and huge information and subclasses. Just, it's got it all, and I don't really have any complaints about that. Final verdict. With new character subclasses, adventure hooks, and detailed lore, Elminster's Candlekeep Companion is the definitive DM and player guide to one of the most iconic locations in the Forgotten Realms. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson, and you can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.